And that will do it. We went out of bounds with 4:10 left, but the Warriors are going to lose this game. They had been 18-3 when leading after 3. But Chris Boucher happened, and they lose the fourth quarter 29-23. And so Toronto gets their 8th home win. They had lost 16 of their last 17 games, but they executed down the stretch, and the Warriors shot 39% for the game.
Yeah, Warriors lose again, new low point, 104-101 to the Toronto Raptors. We officially welcome you in here as we switch the streams and we join Dubs OT here on KNBR, the sports leader. Appreciate the conversation with Larry Krueger. 808 KNBR, the number, 415-808-5627. Where do you go from here if you're the Golden State Warriors? They are 19-20. They lose to the Raptors, who had lost 16 of the last 17. You heard Fitz say it there on NBC Sports Bay Area. Steph Curry, 26 points, but not enough to carry the Warriors tonight as a one-man show down the stretch. In this one, Andrew Wiggins had 20, but couldn't really get it done down the stretch. And the Warriors really, other than Curry and Wiggins, just not enough offense. Kyle Anderson pitched in a little bit here. Dennis Schroeder was not part of the closing lineup for the Warriors in this one, and they are at a new low point, under 500 for the first time again this season. And we've been talking about the report that came out, the story that came out today with Draymond Green to Yahoo Sports, where he basically said, hey, him and Steph and Steve Kerr are all aligned that the Warriors shouldn't be looking to mortgage any of the future to make a run with this team. So at that point, as you sit here continuing to fall down in the Western Conference, you know, it begs the question, well, what the heck move is left to be made? Because you know they're not trading Steph Curry. You know they're not trading Draymond Green. Again, at this point, I can understand once you get to below 500 why you would not look to trade Jonathan Kuminga, because as I was talking about with Larry Krueger, you know, that type of lower stakes, potentially out of the race or battling for a 10 seed, wins don't really matter as much, is kind of what Kuminga needs in terms of an environment to continue to grow and develop. And so again, if you fall so far to a point that the run that you have the potential to get on isn't going to be good enough to get you where you want to be. And again, I'm stopping short of an NBA championship or being a contender, all of that. I'm talking about, can you get a 5 seed? Can you get a 6 seed? Can you get on a run again where you go 12-3 at some point and separate from 500? But you know, this team's in a big time major trouble right now as they sit at 19-20 and now going to Minnesota to wrap up this road trip. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open, and the 408 already chiming in here. I mean, look, at this point, it starts to become, if you're not going to be willing to make any moves, even ancillary moves to try and help this team forward, to try and give them an infusion of positivity, an infusion of hope, if you're not going to be willing to do that, and nobody's asking to mortgage the future to do that, there are moves to be made that don't necessarily include trading Jonathan Kuminga if you believe he's a big part of the future. And again, given exactly where the Warriors are at right now, under 500 with Kuminga out for at least another couple of weeks, I think you can make the case now not pretty strongly to move him, to hang on to him at this point. But there are still moves to be made that have the potential to help this team. And if you're not going to make those moves, then I think the next logical step, if you're not going to trade Steph Curry and Draymond Green, and we know the Warriors are not going to trade Steph Curry and Draymond Green, is to come out and say, hey, all right, this is going to basically be a soft rebuild for the rest of this season. And again, you don't have to make that decision on January 13th, but you got to make it here in the next 3 weeks, basically between now and the trade deadline. if it's going to be, Steph and Draymond are going to play, maybe not back-to-backs, but they're going to play every game as long as they're healthy. That's not back-to-backs. And we're going to look to trade as many veterans as we possibly can for some younger players we want to get a look at. We're going to play all the younger players, Kuminga, Moody, TJD, Pajemski, like all those younger players that need more developmental time. Those guys are going to get a lot of run. And basically the Andersons and the Hields and the Loonies and the GP2s, all of the veteran types, even Andrew Wiggins potentially, they're all, you're going to look to make a move and you're going to look to shuffle the deck at that point. But what cannot continue is this roster. I mean, as it's constituted right now, this team right now is headed for the mid-30s in terms of victories. And like I said to Larry Krueger, Jonathan Kuminga isn't saving that, right? Like, it's not just, Kuminga comes back and now you're getting on the run, because the Warriors weren't playing at that high a level even when Kuminga was a big part of the equation and was playing well. And that's not his fault, by the way. That's not me blaming Jonathan Kuminga at all. But do not expect, could they use him right now? Absolutely. Is he going to be a savior for this team to where they get on a run? No chance. So again, there's all of these different agendas, basically, that the Warriors are trying to come up with answers to. And tonight, I think, has the potential to be a low point, a point of embarrassment that might actually spur some significant action one way or another, because tonight ain't it. And blowing a 9-point lead. If you want to get into the game specifically tonight, we can. But it got to a point for me, and Greg Silver's going to join us here coming up on Dubs OT. And we appreciate everybody, as always, watching on YouTube and Twitch here. But this game got to a point where middle of the fourth quarter, I sent a text to Greg and Kyle Haar, and I basically said, look, this team stinks. And it doesn't matter whether they win this game or lose this game. Like, this team's going nowhere with this current roster. They're going absolutely freaking nowhere. And they can win this game and be a game over 500 and then lose in Minnesota and then come back and beat Washington and then lose to Boston and lose to the Kings and beat Chicago and be 500 a week and a half from now. However you want to do it. But this roster's not it. And so, it almost became independent for me of the outcome tonight. But that being said, there was a game. So if you want to get into the specifics of the game, we can. Not enough offense down the stretch. 23 points in the fourth quarter. Worst scoring quarter for the Warriors in the game. They blow a 9-point lead. Chris Boucher went off on him in the fourth quarter. 17 points, 7 for 7. He did miss one to finish 7 for 8, but he hit 7 of his first 7 in the fourth for 17 points. You got Buddy Hield out there playing 33 minutes. 2 for 10 from 3, 8 points, 3 of 13 overall. This team continues to get dominated in the paint. They got dominated in the paint tonight as well. 50-26. 15 turnovers, but a lot of careless ones. And it's a night where the Warriors didn't shoot it well at all, under 40%, 16 three-point makes, but it's not enough. They had a 4 three-pointer advantage in terms of makes, plus 12 in that department, but minus 24 points in the paint, and that completely undoes it. Scotty Barnes did his thing, 23, 8, and 6, couple of blocks, couple of steals, and the Warriors are at a new low point here for the 2024-2025 season. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Ugly stuff, but we're at the point right now where the Warriors, again, they can lose to anybody. So it's not surprising as much as if you're a Warriors fan, it's disappointing, embarrassing, whatever you want to call it. But if this team continues to roll out the same squad, they're headed for the mid-30s. Or they're heading to reach the trade deadline, do nothing, and basically go into developmental mode. I'm not going to say tank, but they're setting this thing up to go into full developmental mode with Steph and Draymond basically playing any game that's not the second of a back-to-back and sitting on any injury and just kind of tapping out. So the next couple of weeks are going to tell the story. There's a lot of home games coming up, but this thing is on the brink. It is on the brink of disaster. And again, I don't think anybody's asking for the Warriors to do what Draymond Green alluded to in this piece that I want to get into from Yahoo Sports and Vince Goodwill, as he got a chance to talk to Draymond in Detroit, where among the quotes, Draymond said, Steve Kerr, Steph, and myself all disagree with mortgaging the future of the organization, saying that we're going for it right now. How do you feel about that? Because I can understand it, but there are still moves to be made that aren't necessarily mortgaging the future. We'll get into that between now and 9 o'clock. Coming up next, let's take a quick timeout. We'll reset everything. Greg Silver is going to join here for a segment, maybe two, because there's a lot to get into. And then your phone calls, your text messages, and I'm already seeing Robert and Rebel to Sounds and Enrique and Alpha and Let's Ride. And a lot of the regulars here, Estimated Eyes. And we want to hear from you as well. Where do you go from here if you're the Warriors in terms of the big picture? Because as Reed the Steed says, Curry shouldn't have to play hero ball against the Raptors. No, but the Warriors are bad enough of a team right now to where they can lose to anybody. And that was proven to be true in this one tonight. So 808 KNBR. We'll come back. Greg Silver joins next. It's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader.
James Naismith invented basketball. He was Canadian. He did not anticipate this.
This is KNBR, and this is Dubs OT with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Barrett driving, kick out Boucher, yet to miss in the fourth. He got it!
Boucher is 6 for 6 and's got 15 points in the fourth quarter.
Well, he's still celebrating. It's his birthday month.
Yeah, and the Raptors celebrating tonight. 104-101, they beat the Warriors, just the second win for Toronto in the last 18 games, going back to December the 5th. Warriors 19-20, under 500 for the first time this season. It's Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader, and Greg Silver. It's a pleasure. It's a Greg Silver night. Greg jumping in here to join the conversation. And again, everybody on YouTube and Twitch, we're coming in the YouTube chat as well. I'm going to be with you here until 9 o'clock, but do want to welcome Greg in. We got Kyle in our San Francisco studios. Greg, where would you like to begin? Because as I texted you and Kyle, I don't know, early fourth quarter, might have been late third quarter, but to me, there reached a point in this game where it didn't even matter whether the Warriors won or lost the game. That it reached a point just based on the way they were playing, the way that they have played. This latest article with the Draymond Green quotes from Yahoo Sports and Vincent Goodwill, where Draymond's like, "Hey, we're all in agreement. Me, Steph, Steve, we're all in agreement. Don't mortgage the future for this team." It just came to a point for me where it's then what are we freaking doing? So, we can talk about fourth quarter execution on offense, and we can talk about the fact that this team blew another lead and Steph didn't have enough help and he didn't carry him to the finish line like he's needed to do in some of these. Like, we can talk about that stuff in the context of, well, this is one of 82, a bad one. But I feel like tonight, as this team reaches a new low point, the big picture is far more important, because either this team's going to get off the mat, Greg, in the next couple of weeks and prove to the front office that this season is worth saving, or the Warriors are going to have to freaking come out publicly and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do non-Steph, non-Draymond, soft shutdown, where we're going to play all the young guys and trade all the vets that aren't Steph and Draymond, and kind of do this developmental thing between now and the end of the year, keep all the picks, no more trades other than the vet, kind of do a baseball style deadline, where if you're out of it or you got nothing to play for and you're not going to add, then you just sell off as many of your middling veterans as you can, and you let a bunch of young guys play and finish out the final 25, 30 games of the season, and then you figure it out in the offseason. What I don't think any Warrior fan wants to see is a continuation of what we've seen here for the last 6 weeks, which is a team trending to nowhere with seemingly no hope to short-term or long-term even have a freaking desire to try to make it better. Like that is horrendous. I mean, that is just the worst case scenario. All right, lot to chew on there, Greg. So yeah, where do you want to begin, my friend?
Well, first of all, hello. Good to be with everybody in the chat tonight. Yeah, that was a real stinker. So what you're saying at the trade deadline is we're destined toward this, let's just hold on to Blake Snell because he's going to throw that one no-hitter and it's going to be sick. I digress. We're going to be nice to the Giants because
they wish they had a Blake Snell. They wish they had a Blake. If they had a Blake Snell, they might be 5 games better.
Yeah, if they had a first half of the season, Blake Snell, maybe not, but I digress on that one. He's a Dodger now, and we don't want to talk about that. Yeah, it hit a point for sure where I was saying, win or lose, this is a really bad game, and this team just isn't very good, and that's not a fun feeling as someone who grew up rooting for this team, now talks about this team, dives deep into all the Bay Area sports, because, I mean, let's be honest, since the year 2012, we've really had a lot to look forward to or been living in this prime of Warriors basketball, with the lone exception of the pandemic year. But you could chalk that up to, well, the entire team is hurt. They just went to 5 straight finals. So to now be in a zone where the result of a close game doesn't really affect you is kind of a shock. It's kind of different, and it's kind of a big bummer. I don't know what to make of it. The offense has been dried up for about 2 months now. It's not an aberration when they can't shoot the ball. They're not getting good looks. Dennis Schroeder has not fit in the way that I think a lot of people in the Bay Area here had hoped for. He, there's no real second scorer in addition to Steph. I mean, you even had Slow-Mo hitting threes, but they just can't get out of their own way, whether it's turnovers, whether it's fouls, whether it's just not being able to hit shots in the lane. Like Wiggins had a good look. And let's be honest, that was a real fitting end to have Buddy Hield take a contested look and graze the bottom of the net to go out of bounds. That was pretty symbolic of it all right there.
Yes, it was. And he finishes 2 of 10 from 3, 3 of 13 overall, 8 points. He played 33 minutes. This was a night where Schroeder was not, for the most part, a part of the finishing lineup. Kyle Anderson was a part of the finishing lineup with Buddy. I know we'll have Sounds of Dubs OT coming up. Steve Kerr tonight was a head coach taking full responsibility. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. Kind of a night. And look, that's all well and good. But again, and I think all of your points about the individual issues are accurate and on point, Greg. They aren't getting fixed without changes to the roster. And I said this earlier, like it's like this is not a hey, let's get Kuminga back. And again, this is no disrespect to Kuminga. They've missed Kuminga, clearly. They've missed him. But he's not the savior in this thing. Like, it's not Kuminga comes back and then they get on the 12-2 run to get back into the conversation for a top 5, 4, 5, 6 seed in the Western Conference.
And I think what you're getting at, JD, is there is no savior. So Kuminga could come back and help to some degree, but they're not one piece, one move away, one trade away from all of a sudden being back in the mix in the thick of the Western Conference here.
Well, but that being said, you have to do something. You have to try. And again, I said in the crossover segment that I did with Larry Krueger, like you start getting under 500, and as much as I've been, hey, trade Kuminga, I would be open to trading Kuminga for player X or player Y. Like, to me, you start to get under 500, and I can understand, all right, maybe you don't do that, because that becomes more of the developmental type of environment that Kuminga needs. And you may actually get an opportunity if this team truly is cooked by the trade deadline. And let's be honest, like if this team's 4 or 5 under 500 at the trade deadline and they look to make no significant moves, the season is over on February 6th. like the season is done at that point. And so that becomes an environment that, I think you would finally be able to at least get a more detailed look at Kuminga in that environment where you can really kind of let him do a lot of the things that he's wanted to do and see how much that has the potential to further his growth as a player. So point I'm getting at is I'm less inclined here to look to move him the further they get away from 500 and the closer they get to the trade deadline, as much as, 3-4 over, if you can get the right player, even if it's not a superstar. And I've said this, I still think there's an ability for the team to be improved in doing that. I think that's more and more off the table. But the reality is, and this is what I wanted to relate back to the Draymond thing, there are moves to be made that aren't Kuminga, that aren't trading your next 4 first-round picks, that you have the ability to trade, that there are moves to be made that on the fringe can at least continue to keep this team fighting, that aren't going to be these net negative moves to where what you're giving up is going to mean that you crater, right? Or give up on your future, right? Shuffle the deck a little bit, because the one thing that I know for sure is this team ain't doing it. Like this team ain't and I mean, when I say ain't doing it, I mean not making the playoffs, like trending toward being 12th in the West. Like this team is not, it's not happening. So something has to be done in an attempt to give them a boost, or they have to just come out and punt, just announce that it's over. And that they're going to go into that full-blown, more of a developmental mode where, Steph, maybe you're not trading Steph and Draymond, but Steph and Draymond are just going to play, one end of back-to-backs the rest of the year. It's going to be a lot of, Kuminga and Moody are going to start. Pajemski's going to start. You're just going to, you're going to roll them all out. Those guys are going to play. That's going to be your rotation. And the Kyle Andersons and the Buddy Hields and the Kevon Looneys and the Gary Paytons, all of those guys, look to trade them. Look to trade them. Look to try and get some young players back. Look to see if you could get some picks back for some of those players. Whatever you can do within the CBA and the salary cap rules, look to do that at that point. But this thing's at a crossroads where it cannot, like, what's happening right now is not okay. Like, this is not a plan. Like, just riding it out with this crew from now until April 13th is not a plan.
Yeah, I know everyone's been making their football comparisons watching Wild Card Weekend right now. By the way, as the Vikings might be a 14-4 team, down 27-9, losing to the Rams twice and the Lions twice. So that's a different kind of pain. But the reason I bring up football is because I'm thinking about the Pittsburgh Steelers and how this was maybe the first time where I'm like, oh, yeah, I can kind of see why fans get a little tired of the same thing. And the Warriors aren't even that. They can't ride this out. And it would be different if they were getting the 5 seed year after year, and then they would lose the first round playoff series in 6. And they weren't a bad team, but they just couldn't get over that hump. And they were kind of riding it out with Steph. But this is going to be a really, really rude awakening for the next month or so. And I'm talking about for a lot of people in the Bay Area, kind of reverting to what Warriors basketball was back before the We Believe team, with a lot of struggles. No dynasty ever ends with elegance. And I think that's kind of a brutal reality of sports. Now that everyone's turnaround time could be shorter, but the New England Patriots went from a dominant 20-year run, and then they even bottomed out, right? They were terrible for a couple of years. Now Mike Vrabel's there, and maybe they get better sooner rather than later, but they're probably not going to reach that level of dominance when you look at the AFC. The San Antonio Spurs were probably the closest thing I had seen to sort of a dynasty bridge when they had a young Kawhi Leonard, but then he got frustrated with the training staff, and then that ended weird. He got shipped off to Toronto, and then they bottomed out until they were able to get Wemby. So I guess my point is, with a lot of this, like, yeah, we can talk about the specifics of the Warriors, but the bottom line is whatever they're holding on to, I'm glad as a Bay Area, lifelong fan and everything, having grown up, I'm glad that the Warriors didn't try to blow this up too early and we could not have to look back on all these what ifs. But at this point, it's like, okay, you've tried to hold on to everything that this run could be, but whatever's left of it just is not there, and it's time to make a decision one way or another. And if that's that sort of punt model you were talking about where Steph and Draymond just play one end of the back-to-backs, you look to trade any of the older veterans, Kuminga, Moody, Pajemski, Trace Jackson-Davis, get their minutes. Sure, that's one thing. Or you could try to find a couple of moves to maybe make this where you're fighting for a play-in spot this year, and you see if a veteran piece like a Nikola Vucevic, for example, could play well with a Steph Curry. But doing this thing and just being like, oh, well, they're going to get Pajemski, Gary Payton II, and Kuminga back, and then they could be the team that was 12-3 to start the year. No, 12-3, whatever that was, is out the window. DeAnthony Melton is a fine player for sure, but that injury alone is not an explanation for why you went from a team with a really promising start to a team that is in disarray here on January 13th.
Yeah, I mean, they could get those guys back and be a 500 team from the point in which they get all those guys back, or even be a slightly above 500 team from the point at which they get those guys back. But what you're going to be talking about is, are they going to be 4 under at that point, and then they're going to be 3 or 4 over from that, and then they're going to be 500, or they're going to be 1 under and then 3 or 4 over from the time they get everybody back, and you're still going to end up in the same spot where you're basically 10, 11, or 12 when you look at the overall landscape of the Western Conference. Where do the Draymond comments sit with you? I thought was as big a story, just in terms of some of the quotes. Nothing earth-shattering, but I think, for Draymond to say again, and I would encourage everybody to go to Yahoo Sports and Vincent Goodwill, who's based in Detroit, but a national NBA writer, caught up with Draymond when the Warriors were in Detroit on Thursday. I think this is going to be a big talking point here. Draymond to Vincent Goodwill, Steve Kerr, Steph, and myself all disagree with mortgaging off the future of this organization, saying that we're going for it right now. How do you interpret that? That the depth of the article, in case you haven't read it, Greg, the depth of the article was more measured in terms of, hey, there's a move to make, but the Warriors haven't, they haven't found that move yet. They basically have one move to make. It was kind of in line with a lot of the discussion that we've had, where if you make a move too soon, then other moves that come available to you can't make. So in essence, it leads you to where you're kind of biding your time, as the Warriors are right now. But I want to get your take on it. I don't think anybody is asking the Warriors to mortgage the future. Like, that is certainly not what my opinion has been. Mortgage the future. Mortgaging the future is Kuminga and like the next 4 first-round picks you can trade. 26, 28, 30, 32. I'm making up the numbers. I think they're 30 picks tied up. But anyway, what's your takeaway on that?
Yeah, so I had skimmed it a little bit. I actually saved it to set aside before coming on the show, and then had kind of browsed through it, but didn't go too deep into the article yet. That was going to be on my nightly homework assignment, among some other reading here. But when you're going up against Greg Pop every day, it's like he just knows everything about everything. So you got to be on your A game. That was part of the nightly reading in my 100-page PDF, but I digress on that matter.
Well, there's 43 games to go. There's 43 games to go. Why can't they go 33-10, Greg? Well, because their roster sucks, Greg. You can just have Kyle clip that, and when Greg says that, you can just play my voice saying it, and then you can say it, or you can say it, and then you can play my voice saying it for Greg.
I'll just be like, yeah, JD has already answered this one for everybody. But no, I mean, my thoughts were like, okay, I get the understanding of that and not wanting to blow things up, because the reality is you're not that close. In fact, let's just call it what it is. You're very, very far from a 5th championship with this group. So I understand not wanting to mortgage the future so that you have hopes at being a 6th seed and seeing if you can do what you did a couple of years ago, pull an upset in the first round. You get a matchup that's favorable because the other team is inexperienced, and then you run out of gas in the second round and you just can't quite get it done. I think that example right there, the Lakers series, is kind of when this thing really started to tail off officially. And I guess as far as what Draymond makes of it, with Steph, Steve, and Draymond all sort of being on the same page about it, I think like, okay, that's fine and well, but what's the short-term solution here? And I mean short-term in the next year, because the way I see this is, let's say you don't go to the playoffs this year, or you have an ending that is very similar to last year. Then if you keep Kuminga, you're probably looking at paying Kuminga some amount of money, because the even worse option is letting Kuminga walk and not having gotten any value for him in a trade while you could have done it for the past 2 years. So you're probably committed.
Yeah, if Kuminga is on the team on February 6th, then you're signing Kuminga to a 5-year, $170 million extension in all likelihood, and then maybe you trade him at some point down the line. But yeah, so I think that's where that sits for sure. So yeah, Kuminga becomes one of your most important players at that point, if he isn't already.
And so if you take that path, I go back to what we've talked about with Dieter before and what he wrote about, which is the way Jonathan Kuminga, who would now be your future focused franchise player, and his play style is not conducive to what Steve Kerr has run with Steph Curry as the system. So now it's like, okay, if you're going to pay Kuminga that much money, are you still going to try to mesh him and Steph together and Draymond? And he was starting to turn the corner in terms of being able to play with them. But, at that point, I'm just wondering, do Steph and Steve and Draymond all kind of collectively retire. Like, it seems like they've kind of all been aligned in sort of this package deal. But if they're going to be a package deal, then do they all go out together and just accept that, hey, this was an incredible run. They're going to make a documentary about this, and it's time to turn it over to the next coach and the next generation of players. Like, I think it's just, I don't know. I'm stumbling over my words because I'm like stuck in the mud with this.
Well, but even if they do that, they're not doing that in the summer of this summer, right? Like, even if they do that, it's probably at least 2 more years, right? I mean, Steph's got the year that he added to his contract in the summer. Draymond's got the time left on his contract. I mean, maybe Steve's a year in front of it, but I mean, they're not at a point where, like, even if you think, all right, it's done, everybody's accepted they're not winning titles, which I think is more than fair, and everybody's accepting that it's going to end. Well, it's not like this is the last year. This is like of those guys being around. Like, you have to they're going to be on the roster next year unless you move off of them. So, Steve Kerr's going to be your head coach unless you decide you're going to move off of him and go in a different direction with Steph and Draymond on the roster, unless you're going to look to trade Steph and Draymond in the offseason and go into a full type of rebuild mode, which again would be foolish if you're Joe Lacob, because then you're going to have a half-empty building beginning next year if Steph Curry is no longer around. Again, that's not happening. We know that's not happening. I'm not advocating for that or even hinting that it might happen, but there are millions of reasons, ka-ching, why having Steph Curry on a mediocre team is much more financially beneficial for the Warriors than not having Steph Curry on a completely tanking and rebuilding team.
So just kind of pivoting a little bit from that, because this is actually something I've been meaning to ask you. So I think about that Warriors, 2020, 2021 team. I'm looking up that roster right now. And I always said, when Nikola Jokic won MVP that year, I was always thinking, oh, Steph should have actually gotten like maybe even full consideration, like to win the whole award, because I go back and look at that roster and you got Steph Curry, Michael Mulder, Brad Wanamaker, Nico Mannion, Gary Payton II for a little bit, Juan Toscano-Anderson, Damian Lee, a young Jordan Poole, Kelly Oubre Jr., Kent Bazemore, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, Eric Paschall, Alan Smilagic, and Marquise Chris. And then you had Kevon Looney, James Wiseman, Jordan Bell in the center. And so the reason I bring this up is because I list off all those names.
That's a worse roster than this one.
Yeah, and I'm just like, how many of those guys went on to be viable players in the NBA? Looney was good for this team. Kelly Oubre Jr. is a rotation player. Andrew Wiggins wasn't quite as good yet that year. He became better. And then you got Draymond Green. So I'm thinking about this roster, and I get that it's a different discussion because a lot of these guys are young. But I do wonder how many players on this roster, and this is not to excuse Steve Kerr or the front office. Everybody deserves the blame when the team plays this bad. But I do wonder how much of this roster has a real future in this NBA beyond the next few years. Like, is Tracy Jackson-Davis going to be a player for 6-7 years? Maybe, because he's a 7-footer and he possesses some raw talent. I think Jonathan Kuminga is going to be sticking around the league because we've seen what he can do as a talent. But even a likable player like Moses Moody or Brandon Pajewski or Gary Payton II, like, I don't know. And this is not me dumping on the entire roster, but I think it's fair to just kind of raise your eyebrows in the question of like, okay, how good is this roster as a whole, or how ungood?
Well, it's not. It's not a good roster. And again, they had a plan in the offseason when a lot of the things that didn't work out, whether it was Lauri Markkanen or Paul George. And they decided that they wanted to just acquire some good role players and try to win with depth and pieces that fit together in a complementary way. And I think they felt they had a good balance of, young and old. I think they felt they had a good balance of different skill sets that complemented each other. I think they thought they had enough overall talent and depth to where they wouldn't have to be as dependent on Steph to carry them. And I think to a certain extent that might, like, the idea was a decent idea, right? I mean, we talked about it a lot. Like, you could tell from being in training camp in Hawaii as I was in October, like it did feel different. It did feel like they had a good vibe to them. They had a good energy to them. You could see, even getting to watch, little portions of practice that we did and post practice and talking to the guy, like, you could see that it did fit and it was different, but that only gets you so far. It's the old Mike Tyson line that I've used a bunch of times. Like, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And the Warriors' initial plan was a good one. It was a solid one, but it was only going to get you through the first quarter of the season. And so what happens, the point of what the Warriors decided to do wasn't that you thought that team that they originally assembled was good enough to contend for a top 4 seed on its own. It was that you built that team to get off to a really good start and be harmonious and win enough to make the moves that you really want to make more worthwhile. And so when you're 12-3, you should be skulking around looking for moves, not from a position of disadvantage, but from a position of, or desperation, but from a position of kind of knowing that it's not that it's going to fall apart at the level that it has, but knowing that the 12-3 isn't going to just turn into a 60-win team either. And so to me, that's where the error is. And then when it falls apart, because here's what I think, and I want to hear what you think about this. I think the Warriors when they started off 12-3, I think they started to believe that team that they had could contend for a championship. Now, I don't know and that to me is a fool's errand. Like that was never going to be the case. It was more of a stopgap, feel good kind of start. It was a starting point. It was a bridge. It was a group that could get you to where you really wanted to be, but you still had to not be afraid to go and make the moves. And then as things got worse, they become more and more close to a position of desperation. And then they don't want to make moves because they're desperate, or there's the appearance of desperation, or they don't want to give up enough. And so then the thing snowballs on them, and it's injuries, and it's Steph, and it's, this roster kind of turning back into a pumpkin a little bit, all of those things true. And now you wind up at a point where you have to do something to send it back in the other direction. And they've just been unwilling to do it. They tried to get Schroeder. They got Schroeder. That's fine. Cost him nothing. Well, you need another shooter then. And not that Schroeder's worked out, but you need something that you need to take another shot at it, or you need to completely shut it down. Long-winded, rambling answer, as I'm prone to do, but all of it can be equally true. Like, the initial plan can be good, but you have to know when it's starting to go the other direction, and you got to do things to, when the fire starts to go out, you got to throw another log on that fire to keep it going.
So what was the initial question overall? Because I did appreciate the long answer. I'm just trying to remember what part you wanted me to address.
Well, no, you kind of asked me, well, how good or not good is the roster? And I think the roster was good enough at the beginning of the year to take them so far. But over 82, it wasn't going to be good. So at some point you have to, you don't just go, hey, we're 12-3. We're good. Like, we're in the clubhouse. We're good. We're carrying this through to the deadline. It's like, no, you got to be looking to continue to make moves, to stoke this thing, to further it, you're not really that team. Like, to me, you should have had a foresight to understand that and be looking to make moves that augment it along the way. And so I think that, to me, is the miscalculation as opposed to the initial roster being bad.
Gotcha. And I remember where I was going to go with this. And shout out to CA says, way to be real, Greg. Yeah, hey, that's the perks of being comfortable with Kyle and JD. I can just be like, yo, where were we? So I got to give Mark Spears a lot of credit because we're going to have Mark Spears on tomorrow, or at least we should, unless anything changes, because things do. But Mark Spears was very much saying early on, they got to make a move now, sell while it's high. And I asked him, why don't you want to kind of see where this thing goes? I'm not saying I think they're a contender, but, they do have something working with the balanced roster. And he essentially gave the answer of what you were just getting at, JD, where it's like, I just think that you got to sell high. Like, if you hit a point where it gets really bad, you could get to a desperation point, and then there's not a deal on the table that you like. And that's kind of exactly what's happened. So I'm going to follow up on that discussion with him tomorrow, but he was not buying the 12-3. I don't think I was buying the 12-3, but I was kind of seeing them maybe in the 7-8 seed range. And it's just fallen off a cliff a lot quicker than I expected it to.
Yeah, I thought the 12-3 was the 12-3. It didn't mean they were going to win 60 games. I thought it might have given them a shot to win 50 if they continued to add to it. And that's, but what happened was, and you're right, and Spears was right. What happened was the thing it went the other direction so quickly that I don't think the Warriors in the moment totally realized that they needed to do something. And I think the Melton injury more than anything really spurred action. I thought the Kuminga injury, and I said it the night that Kuminga got hurt. I said, hey, this team might need to go make another move just to get through the next few weeks with Kuminga out, because like him or love him or think he's got work to be done as an NBA player, they had grown so dependent on Jonathan Kuminga that it was going to be kind of difficult to find offense without him. Like, if you've been watching them in the few weeks before he went down, I mean, that was obvious. And so, at that point, again, it's not like you can just go make any move that you want to make, but I think you can't say on the one hand that you believe in the roster and need time to evaluate, and then have the roster sort of falling apart behind you, and then not look to make a move to try and salvage it. And again, salvage it is not, you got to win a title. Like, salvage it is not make a move. So I think too often we get lost in the conversation of, well, if you can't win a title, then you just do nothing. Well, no, if you do nothing, you're going to have more games like tonight, and you're going to have 3 more months like the last month and a half has been. And I don't think that's what you can't put Steph through moving forward like that, just be my whole thing. Just be respectable and compete and make compete for the 6. You may not get it. You may end up 8. You may end up 9, but compete for the 6. Like, do what you can to compete, and then see where you're at. And you know what? If you get your ass kicked by Oklahoma City or whoever, so be it. If you get beat by Houston in a 7-game series or whoever the heck is there, Denver, then so be it. You gave it your shot. You're not mortgaging the future for that. Like, you could make a move that would help you get to that point where you're 7 fighting for 6 or 9 fighting for 6 or whatever it ends up being. Like, you could get to a point where you do that and lose, and you're still going to have future picks, and you're probably at that point still going to have Kuminga. Like, what are we really talking about here? Like, I just don't understand the unwillingness. And I know, Greg, trades are hard, and the CBA and there's all these things that the league did to the poor Warriors to prevent them from getting better. I don't want to hear any of that. Like, I don't want to hear any of that. Like, go figure it out. Mike Dunleavy, your job is to figure it out and to make this thing more interesting. That's really what it boils down to. Make the next 3 months more interesting.
So first of all, let this guy cook, John freaking Dickinson, everybody. Yeah, that was awesome. And as we got a gutless from Estimated, Yeah, it's been a lot of gutless lately. I'm trying to remember where I was even going to go with that because, okay, here's what I was going to say. So, yes, I'm not going to bring up trades are hard. I'm not going to bring up the CBA. I'm not going to bring up this and that and that everyone likes to complain about. But my question is, if you do not include Jonathan Kuminga in said trade package, can you really get anything worth value? I mean, Andrew Wiggins is kind of your only other piece because he's young enough, but he hasn't even been the problem this year. If anything, you've kind of needed the two-way play from Andrew Wiggins. So it's kind of like trade Kuminga or bust for the sake of making it interesting. And after the way the Warriors have played with Kuminga injured, I'm not sure they're going to want to do that.
Yeah, look, at this point, maybe you look to trade Wiggins. If you're under 500 a couple of games, then to me you're more open to looking at a deal that involves Wiggins and maybe not Kuminga, because Wiggins has got future years on the deal, and this thing is not clicking the way that you want it to click. Like, so if you're going to keep, like, if you make the decision you're going to keep Kuminga because you want to continue to develop him in a more low stakes kind of environment, well then, I mean, what do you need Andrew Wiggins for at that point? Like, you really don't, honestly. Like, because again, and I'm talking about my version of an extreme, which because I like to keep it real with, well, what the hell could the Warriors actually do, right? And it's because they're not trading Steph and they're not trading Draymond, and so if they continue to move forward on the path that they're on, then they're not, like, it's just going to continue to be what it's been. So you have to look to do something. But if you go, I think the most logical version of do nothing without completely tearing it down to the studs is you're going to start playing all your young guys with Steph and Draymond, and you're going to try to trade some of your veterans. Well, Wiggins would be in the trade your veterans category. And that, yeah. I know I kind of took a minute to get back to that point, but Wiggins would be in the Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton II bucket of players that you would be looking to, at least looking to get younger on, take some flyers on some other guys, without necessarily having to commit long-term to players that you may not want.
Well, I don't know what you're getting for Buddy Hield at this point, but I do hear you on the front of Kyle Anderson, Kevon Looney, some of the other veterans. Yeah, probably not. No, but no, I think that's a good answer in that you probably can look to explore trades with Andrew Wiggins, and not because Andrew Wiggins has been bad this year. I think we've probably stuck up for him more than a lot of people here in the Bay Area, but it's the point of what you said. You put it nicely. What's the point of keeping Andrew Wiggins if this is where it's going? Like, okay, he keeps you as the difference between winning, 38 games and 31 games. Like, at that point, yeah, you do try to get something that could maybe help you next year, or take a swing on a younger guy and see if you can make it interesting for Steph, who does want to compete. And by the way, my one comment on Steph, this is with no agenda in mind. Who knows if he wants to be traded? Like, there's also the life element of you got to move somewhere else. He's got 4 kids. He's got, in fact, he's got less than a 1-year-old. His kid was born in July, I think. It's not just the sports aspect of what does he mean to the city and wanting to finish your franchise, your career with one franchise. Who knows if he even wants to get traded? If he does and he asks for a trade or decides that this situation is not working and would like to be moved, great. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm not even sure that that's an appealing option to Steph.
No, and look, if Steph wants to stay, Steph can stay. I mean, I'm not going to be one this season or even the next to say, hey, look to move Steph Curry or look to trade Steph Curry. Like, I just like that doesn't make, from a watchability standpoint, like, the only way to me that move is made is if Steph goes to the organization and says, I want out. I want to go somewhere else. I want to go try and win a championship somewhere else, or not win a championship somewhere. I want to go play in Charlotte for a year. I want to, whatever it is, at the end of his career. I feel like Steph's kind of got carte blanche to make the first move on that. But again, I think we're multiple steps away from that, right? It's Steph to the organization, then they discuss, and again, that's a real significant teardown at that particular point in time. All right, Greg, we're overdue for a break. We're going to take a quick time out here. Do you have a final thought? Do you want to hang for another segment? I know you got the big show tomorrow. If you don't, that's fine. But I want to give you an opportunity at a final thought here on the night, if you so choose to move on with your night here, as we have about 45 minutes to go.
Yeah, I think I will go final thoughts so I can get to my reading and try to actually get a little bit of sleep tonight. I'm on the back end of a cold, fighting that through, so really trying to be disciplined with myself here. But the final thought, and I guess, I see Robert in the chat tonight. Robert is the big silver lining guy. We have silver linings playlist every day on Papa and Lunch, so I'll try to think of a good song for tomorrow and maybe something related to this debacle for the Golden State Warriors. But the silver lining for this one, I guess that a win would have just been another Band-Aid for what the season has become, so we can have a real discussion here. But the real silver lining is that we are still going to have a meet and greet show January 20th around Thrive City. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it is, and I'm really looking forward to that. And that's a week from tonight. It's going to be in the afternoon. It's right around 4:30 after the Warriors and the Celtics. So yeah, I was talking to Jimmy from over at Harmonic. Rough night for Jimmy, by the way. He's the biggest Vikings fan I know from that area in Minneapolis. We've had a lot of discussions this year with Jimmy, the manager over at Harmonic. And this is a rough ending for our guy Jimmy as he watches tonight with the Rams about to win and knock out the Vikings. So Greg, thanks, man. Appreciate it. We'll talk here at some point, maybe before Monday, but if not, well, we're doing the show together Friday, so we'll definitely talk on Friday because I'm going to be sitting in for Papa, and we'll probably continue a lot of this conversation in the 10-2 spot. But Greg, have a great night, man. Appreciate you as always. Work on that cold, and we'll see you Friday.
Thanks, guys. Talk soon, and probably lots more to say coming up here.
All right. That's Greg Silver. Let's take a quick time out. 808 KNBR. We got a couple of breaks we need to get in here between now and 9. I've gone Johnny old school with the just blowing through the breaks here. So we'll do that. We'll get into the YouTube chat heavy here in the next segment. We also have sounds at Dubs OT, some good stuff from Steph Curry in the locker room. We'll get that set up coming up at the bottom of the hour, and fun with numbers. Warriors lose to the Raptors. They are at a new rock bottom point for the season. 104-101 was the final. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Sucks. It sucks. I don't like falling below 500, but here we are, so we got to do better.
Live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang!
This is Dubs OT with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader, streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Just turned and fired up and out. Rebound Boucher and setting up Olynyk. What a rebound by Chris Boucher.
And then Moody with the steal. And then he couldn't hold on to it. And shed lob and Trace Bennett the whole way. Well done. And Steph Curry, he'll score on the other end. What a wild sequence there.
Yeah, wild sequence there. One of the bright spots. Warriors had the 9-point lead in the fourth, but they end up losing it. Another clutch loss, 24th clutch game for the Warriors, now 11-13 in those. We don't want to spoil our fun with numbers here tonight as the Warriors get beat by the Raptors, the lowly, near the bottom of the Eastern Conference Toronto Raptors, now 9-31 with the win. Warriors fall under 500, and for the first time, I believe, into the outside looking in now as far as the play-in tournament. The Suns had gotten to 3 under. They've won 3 in a row. The Kings continue to stay hot. They've won 7 in a row under Doug Christie after losing their first game with Christie, and some big wins in Boston among them. So they are 20-19. They're 9th. So they've gone from 12th to 9th here in the last couple of weeks, winning the 7 in a row. The Suns are back in 10th, and the Warriors and Spurs currently the outside looking in, both one game under 500 at 11-12. All right, YouTube chat. Let's go rapid fire here for the next 7 or 8 minutes. Robert, and I'm going to start from early. I'm starting from basically when this game went final. Robert, this team is pathetic. They're so low IQ. Even Curry at the end jacking up that BS. I'm sure there'll be some calls on how important Moses Moody is, though, says Robert. Yeah, Moses Moody has had a rough go over the last couple there. Haven't been a lot of people calling in and talking about how Moses Moody needs to play more. But if the Warriors go full-blown developmental mode after the trade deadline, assuming they do a soft tap out on the season, then there'll be plenty of minutes for Moses Moody to grow and develop, because he just got a big raise for the 2025-26 season, and a couple of years beyond that, going back to the beginning of this season in October. Enrique Rivera, we are cooked. Season is done. Wrap it up, fellas. Rebel to Sounds, this loss is comical, a complete joke. Rebel to Sounds, Buddy Brick with the Olay defense. Brutal night. I mean, just brutal. I mean, if Buddy Hield's not making shots, he doesn't do anything that requires he be on the floor. And that was the first thing that I tweeted out. You can go back and look it up when the Warriors made the acquisition. If he's not making shots, he's unplayable. Let's ride. Wiggins was good, though. Wiggins was good, but Wiggins was good in this game tonight. Still has not won in Toronto in his career, by the way. Going back to, hadn't played in Toronto with the Warriors, actually, at all. Going back to, I think 2018 was the last time he played, or 2019 was the last time he played in Toronto at all, because of COVID, and he missed some time there when the Warriors played there, and he was away from the team. But Wiggins was a bright spot, I think, tonight. Robert, I don't want to hear Kerr post-game interviews either anymore. They're a total waste of time if we're being real. Well, we are going to hear a little bit of Steve Kerr coming up, but I want to give the people their opportunity. What a transformation in Buddy. Aaron Cliff, almost unplayable right now if he isn't going to make shots. Too many guys that don't make enough shots. Shot selection as a whole, very questionable. Yeah, they took some bad shots tonight, and they have continued to take a lot of bad shots during this stretch. I mean, more shots look bad when you're not making them. And yes, we did. Buddy Hield did have 4 excuse me, did have 4 steals tonight. That was not a misprint in the box score. Sear, the 3-pointer by Steph with 46 seconds left, was the reason we lost. Too much hero ball. Well, he's played more hero ball, and that's true. And Steph's taken some bad shots. In fairness, he's played more hero ball because he's had to play hero ball. And again, I think it's difficult for Steph, as great a player as he is, to look around at what the rest of this roster provides right now, and not like, he's thinking in that moment, a rushed, hurried Steph Curry shot is a better opportunity to hit a dagger than looking to kick it to somebody else. And to be honest, you can't blame him at this point. But yeah, so he's taken some bad shots in some of these close losses. He's had some turnovers in some of these close losses. But the reality is, if the rest of this team was better, maybe they would be in better position in some of these games to begin with, to where it doesn't have to necessarily look to save it. Joke's on you. Blow it up. The offense is garbage. How can an offense be this bad? The motion has gone the way of the Wildcat gimmick. There are no athletes on this team. Yeah, they truly do not have enough athletes on this team. And even Kuminga, who's one of their better athletes at times, he gets shown up by the true athletes in the game, which I think is part of the reason, a low-key reason why he hasn't quite made that second jump that I think everybody was expecting, is like the true grown-up athletes in the league. And he's still got time to get to that point. But, that to say, I mean, he's still the Warriors' best athlete, second best athlete. I mean, Wiggins is obviously up there, but he's somebody that's approaching 30. So we'll see as far as all of that goes. Joke's on you. You would need guts to be gutless. This was a no-show. Tonight doesn't qualify as a no-show, but yeah, 2 days off, and they showed no force. You have no marbles. You have no marbles. No marbles for the Warriors in this one. What? No? Do we need a Michael Malone for that one, Kyle? Is there a Michael Malone waiting for? No class, no balls. Yeah, the last part there. Andis, Wiggins was MIA in the second half. Yeah, down the stretch, Wiggins would hit the 1-3 to beat the shot clock buzzer in the middle of the fourth quarter there. Other than that, yeah, he struggled. I wanted to look at the numbers for Wiggins in the fourth quarter here as I kind of click around. Quarter 4, Andrew Wiggins. I can kind of bring it up. Yeah, let's see. Wiggins in the fourth quarter was 2 for 6. So yeah, he hit the 1-3 and hit one other wild jumper in the fourth quarter. Did finish with 20 points. But again, he is just not somebody that you just go to down the stretch of games and really feel extremely confident about. A rebel to sounds, where Wiggins is not a second option. He's not a second option if you are going to tell him ahead of time he's got to be the second option. I mean, that's the truth. CB, a big who can shoot, might add 10 points in net. Then we'd be scoring in the 110s instead of so. Yeah, it doesn't totally work that way. I mean, if he plays again, I think at this point, look to go make the Vucevic move. I know I said that a couple of games ago. I mean, I said that when Kuminga went out. But again, that seems to be held up. Up 9 in the third. Andis Brown thought the Warriors were going to stretch out the lead. Back-to-back turnover. Yeah, that was the other pivot point of they just could not turn the game into, making the Raptors feel like they were close to tapping out. Every time they seemingly got control, it would be a couple of bad shots or turnovers, and it would end up leading back to, the other way, to where the Raptors would be in the game. A few people noting our late start on this stream, because we were on the other stream, on the Larry Krueger stream. So yeah, sometimes when we rub right up against Larry's show in that 6 to 7 hour, I end up starting on Larry's stream, and then we end up moving over. Tony Smith, we suck. Need another JD rant. Well, had a couple of those at this point here over the course of the last hour. So I think, Kyle, we've delivered on that, right? Tony Smith, we're cooked. CA, we've been stuck in the same season for the past 3 years now. Andis Brown, if they're not going to make a trade to mortgage their future, then what's the plan? Because they're not winning anything with this squad. I think that's sort of the theme of the night. Tank for flag, says Tony Smith. Again, like, this team is going to win in the low to mid 30s if they keep it rolling probably the mid-30s if you keep it rolling at this point. And that's tough. Everyone's worst nightmare, tear down the Warriors. San Jose Jazz fan trade Marcus Boucher for Chris Boucher. Yeah, Chris Boucher killed him down the stretch in the fourth quarter. EB here. They changed the CBA to stop the Warriors dynasty. Yeah, I mean, in part, I think they changed the CBA to stop dynasties in general. I think there's some other teams that have been hurt by some of the rules, including Denver. The only team that seemingly is in front of it among the teams that were already good was Boston. And, now it's sort of that next wave of teams. You already had Minnesota tapping out on financials in the offseason. They traded Karl Anthony Towns. Denver won the title and then couldn't really keep their depth together because of the way things shook out with the financials. Boston's done it. Their time's coming, I think. And, I think then you've got the teams that are really young in Oklahoma City. Cleveland's in a good place, obviously financially, because they're heavily reliant on a lot of young players that are developing. Tony Smith facts. JD Kuminga's return's not going to get us to win games at a high level. No, but he'd help them. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't matter. But how many games at this point, if he had played, of this last week and a half, almost 2 weeks or 10 days, would they have one more win? Maybe. Tonight's really the only one I think you can say they definitely would have won. Maybe what if Kuminga had played. I think again, even on a bad night, he's typically getting you 12 to 14. If he's out there for long enough. So that's probably enough to get you through. But who is he taking those points away from is another part of that conversation. Estimated eyes. I want Draymond gone. Steph got to go too. Same with Kerr. Wow. Get some young guys who play consistently together. That, but I'm not watching this joke ball. This is a joke. Wow, man. A couple people on Steph for the shot selection down the stretch. Let's ride. Rockets and OKC. Young, they're going to run the West. Andis Brown, my guess is the Warriors are going to wait until the summer and try trading for another superstar again. I think that's probably the most likely outcome in the big picture. Again, I think there are ancillary moves you can make between now and then to try and salvage at least remaining competitive at a little bit better than 500 level. Like again, I'm not saying mortgage the future, give up first round picks, anything like that. Hell, I don't think you can realistically trade Kuminga if you're under 500. That is a game changer for me. So I understand that, but there are moves you can make if it's shuffling the deck with some of the other younger players that you have. If it's giving up second round picks, it's looking to trade some of the veterans that would bring in players that could potentially continue to help you the rest of this year and still be tradable assets, even if you look to go with the big move for a star and trying to cobble together one more run. I do think that's the most likely offseason scenario. But again, this team's got 3 months to go before they even get to that point. Joe H., remember when we all thought last season was as bad as it could get? Oh yeah, this team's got no shot. This team right now has no shot at winning 46 games. None. Like, they have no shot. Again, barring moves, probably multiple moves at this point. So, Andis also chiming in on the Yahoo article. And again, the Vincent Goodwill article, Yahoo Sports. I would suggest that anybody read it. Yeah, I think it is directly related to Kuminga. He's been obviously as high as anybody on Kuminga. Wait for the summer. Again, if Kuminga's on the roster, though, then that means you're signing him. And once you sign him, that means he's untradeable. See, here's the thing. The other part of that, too. Like, once he signs the extension, I think he becomes untradeable for a period of time next season. So if you keep him, then you're re-signing him. And if you're re-signing him, then that means you're keeping him even into next year. So as far as using him as an asset, that clock gets shifted a little bit once you re-sign him to the deal. And again, I think it's going to be a 4 to 5 year, $150 probably to $170 million deal if the Warriors look to get a deal done with Kuminga this offseason. So, all right, let's go ahead and pause there. We'll come back. We'll do a quick Sounds of Dubs OT, a few more here from the chat, and we will also do some fun with numbers to wrap things up here as the Warriors lose to the Raptors 104-101. It's KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Did you hear something?
Yeah, like a swoosh.
Yeah.
Dubs OT presents the sounds of silver. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 104.5.
This is as frustrating a night as we've had all season for me. This game was right there for us to win, and we let them get right back in it. Again, it's lack of discipline in our coverages defensively, in our offensive execution, and I'm the coach, so it's my fault. It sucks. It sucks. I don't like falling below 500, but here we are, so we got to do better.
Yeah, and here they are, and now they're going to play Minnesota on Wednesday in Minneapolis, and the Timberwolves playing a little bit better. They've won 6 of their last 10 to get to 21-18. Warriors did win in Minnesota a month ago, and so we'll see if they can do it again. We welcome you back here. They've beaten the Timberwolves 2 out of 3 in the early part of this season, and actually 2 of the time, both times the Warriors have beaten them since the 12-3 start when things have not been going in a positive direction. So yeah, the Warriors now 7-17 in their last 24 games, but 2 of the 7 have been against the Timberwolves in that span. So as much as you can't count a game like tonight firmly in the win column, you can not necessarily count a game like Wednesday night firmly in the loss column either, as the Timberwolves and Warriors play for the 4th and final time. Back here on Dubs OT with JD. Let's get our Sounds of Dubs OT segment in here, and let's get it going with Steve Kerr. We heard from the head coach of the Warriors there. A couple of more from Steve as he discussed the lack of execution down the stretch in this one. Again, they can't hit shots, and they can't seemingly get good shots down the stretch.
Didn't get good looks, didn't execute very well. Weren't disciplined enough, and that's my fault. I'm the coach of the team. I have to find a way to help this team, and I'm not doing a good job of that. We're down the stretch, we're not executing, and but that's happening throughout the game at both ends. Missed rotations, missed coverages on defense, and then poor possessions offensively. It's on me.
Yeah, so we'll see what he can come up with again, trying to take the blame off of the players tonight. I mean, that's, you see it, that's part of being a head coach. And so he's, taken up for it. But again, I'm not sure what the answers are. Tonight could have been a night where maybe there's a little more Dennis Schroeder. And Schroeder wasn't terrible tonight. I know it's been well chronicled, as to the fact that he has not played well since joining the Warriors, but tonight it was, maybe Schroeder out there instead of Buddy Hield. If there's any one thing maybe you look in hindsight to do a little bit differently. That gets us to our next clip, which is about Buddy Hield. And Buddy Hield tonight, 3 of 13, 8 points, did have the 4 steals and 3 assists and his usual couple of turnovers. But when he's not making shots, his impact is not really felt in other areas, even on nights where he is doing other things. And tonight, in fairness to him, was one of those nights. But Steve Kerr addressed his confidence level right now in Buddy Hield, and should he continue to be out there.
He's had some good looks, and he's a great shooter. We know that. And, I think he's pressing a little bit. I think all our guys are pressing because they know our margin for error is slim. And so he's just pressing, but I trust him. I mean, I put him in the last play because I believe that he's always going to make the next shot. He gives us spacing, even when he's not making shots. He gives us spacing. People respect him, they guard him, and he opens up the floor. So I'm going to keep playing him. I'm going to keep trusting him.
So there you go. Going to keep playing him and going to keep trusting him. He started at the 3. Again, I don't know that the Warriors necessarily had another option tonight other than to go 3-guard lineup. Because of some of the guys who are out, and unless you want to start Guy Santos or Moses Moody. I mean, Guy Santos. I mean, Moses Moody was terrible tonight, by the way. So anybody, and I know there were a couple of people in the chat. I do want to take this up. And Moses Moody played 14. Like, nobody should be looking at Moses Moody tonight and say, why did he only play 14 minutes? Moses Moody stunk tonight. He was 0 for 6. He was 0 for 3 from 3. He had a couple of boards. He was a game worst -10. The Warriors were terrible when Moses Moody was on the court tonight. So he was not the answer. But I don't know that Buddy Hield can continue to be the answer either. Guy Santos fell back to the pack after a couple of decent games, which obviously amidst Guy Santos, he was not good either. Him and Moody, both not good. in this game tonight. And so that meant more Buddy Hield, more Lindy Waters, and the Warriors just with not enough as they wind up losing this one to the Raptors. All right, one more from – actually, you know what? Let's hear one more from Steve Kerr. We talked a lot about offense, but Steve also addressed the defensive issues that have led to the Warriors losing some close games.
The guard-to-guard switches at the top, they beat us down the stretch. Some stunt and falls where, we want to give them a wing three instead of a corner three. I think Boucher got one from the corner that got him going. I think some late switches, on their curls. We messed up a bunch of them. And so those are things we've got to practice and reemphasize. And again, I'm the coach, so I've got to do a better job. We're not disciplined enough to win these close games. And every game is going to be close right now. We play probably more close games than anybody in the league. And so we have to win in the margins. We're not winning in the margins, and that's coaching.
Yeah, and look, not disciplined enough, not talented enough. Again, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Kerr choosing to take the blame, put it on himself. But at some point, again, I think you just look up, and even on a night where you're facing a team that's only won 8 games, I mean, a good chunk of the game tonight, and I think this has got to be the most glaring and disappointing thing if you're a Warriors fan tonight. For a good chunk of that game, the Warriors were ahead and had opportunities to maybe break it open into double digits and the like. But for a good chunk of the game, the Raptors look like the more talented team, the more athletic team. The Raptors look like the better team for a good chunk of the game. And that's where this, like this. And the Raptors, to their credit, do have a lot of young talent on the roster. They're in a full-blown rebuild at now 9-31. But at times you're like, the Raptors are almost the kind of team where you start thinking, well, wait a minute, like, this is what a rebuild. Shed kind of cooked the Warriors in the second quarter. Agbaji was hurting them throughout the night. I thought he was really good tonight. 12 points. Boucher, somebody that the Warriors know well, was in their organization. You talk about a stretch big who can block some shots on the interior and rebound a little bit. I mean, man, Chris Boucher is one that got away from the Warriors organization. But this is what a rebuild looks like. And you need multiple young players to look to build around. So let's hear a couple from Steph. And the first one, this is a long one, and this is via Anthony Slater of The Athletic, in response to the story that we were talking about earlier, the Vince Goodwill story, with the quote from Draymond Green, where Draymond said that he, and I'm paraphrasing, and Steph Curry and Steve Kerr are all in agreement that the Warriors should not be mortgaging the future to go all in on this team at this time. So this was Steph post-game in the locker room in Toronto addressing that.
Desperate trades or desperate, moves that deplete the future. Like, there is a responsibility on allowing or keeping the franchise in a good space and good spot when it comes to where we leave this thing when we're done. Doesn't mean that you're not trying to get better. Doesn't mean that you're not active in any type of search to, if you have an opportunity or a trade makes sense, or even in the summer free agency makes sense, like, you want to continue to get better. Nobody wants to be stale or be in a situation where you're passing up opportunities, but it doesn't mean that you're desperate, just flinging assets all around the place just because you want to do something. So there's Mike understands, like, we want to win. We want to be in that position where, we've always said that you want to be relevant in the championship type of chase while, we understand we're getting older and deeper into our careers and allowing some of the young guys to kind of blossom. But it doesn't mean you're getting desperate. So it's better to kind of be patient and understand what that looks like. And I know, Mike is always on the phone trying to figure it out. That's what a good GM does. Doesn't mean there's a deal on the table. Doesn't mean that you're desperate. Doesn't mean that you're just flinging, like I said, assets all the way around and being reckless with it.
Well, you don't need to be reckless, but again, you got to do something. And again, I think everybody's kind of saying the right thing, but I think and nobody wants this organization from, and that's where you do give Steph, I guess, and Draymond, like nobody, like they don't want the organization to be at a point where, it's left barren after they're gone. I mean, a lot of athletes wouldn't care about that, but again, there's a happy medium in play here between improving yourself and having a deal that can improve yourself and continuing down the road that this thing is on right now. And so I think that's important. Quick follow-up to that as well from Steph Curry. And this one's much shorter, as he was asked about, being kept in the loop in terms of potential options that are available on the trade market.
If there was a situation that made sense for our team, I'm pretty sure we know about it. That's how we've always operated. That's the expectation now until February 6th.
And so hinting at, nothing really that moves the needle at this point. And obviously there's been many stories written over the last couple of weeks. Seemingly every player that's popped up as a potential possibility for the Warriors has been shot down, with the exception of Vucevic. And so, I mean, we'll see where the Warriors end up going in this thing. But yeah, the clock is ticking right now, and the Warriors are now not even a play-in team here at a game under 500 and trending in the wrong direction. They've been trending in the wrong direction for some time. Let's end it on that note. We had one more from Andrew Wiggins, but we can table that and go ahead and Kyle, what do we want to do here? Do we want to take a timeout, come back and do fun with numbers? I know we're close to the end of the top of the hour. Do you want to just do a quick fun with numbers and then wrap the show? It's up to you. Let's just do a quick. All right, let's do a quick fun with numbers and let's hit the thing, and then we'll call it a night, and we'll head toward Wednesday and Minnesota.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, Warriors 19-20, as we've talked about all night long. First time under 500. They're 1-2 on this trip. It's a tipping point for the trip here as they go to Minnesota. They did win in Minnesota a month ago, but obviously not going to be favored in Minnesota on Wednesday. That game, by the way, now a 6:30 Pacific tip. If you're looking to watch it, it on a lot of schedules says 5 p.m. ESPN picked it up, so they kicked it to 8:30 Central and 6:30 Pacific time. So we'll have Dubs OT for you here on KNBR right about 9 o'clock after Sports Phone KNBR with Dieter Kurtenbach on Wednesday night. And then back at Harmonic beginning on Saturday for the lengthy homestand as the Raptors take the 1-0 series lead in the season series. Two teams will play March 19th at Chase. And Toronto has won 4 of the last 6 games against the Warriors at home. And so the Warriors did get a win in Toronto last year. Warriors used their 22nd different starting lineup of the season. That's 22 different lineups in 39 games, and the 4th straight game that they've had a different starting lineup. Incredible, honestly. Warriors played their 24th clutch game, now 11-13. Again, the score within 5 points with 5 minutes or less to go. 24 clutch games. Warriors are 11-13. Only the Timberwolves, who the Warriors will play and have beaten in a couple of clutch games, have played more. The Timberwolves have played 25, and the Warriors were under 40% shooting tonight. Now 0-7 on the season when they're under 40% shooting. Milestone night for Steph Curry with his 26 points, as he now has 24,371 points. So that moved him into 28th place on the all-time NBA scoring list. So he passed Allen Iverson in that one. And he also, with 7 assists tonight, passed Kobe Bryant for 35th all-time on the all-time assist list. So Steph passing some all-time greats tonight, as he is an all-time great himself with the scoring and assist numbers. Andrew Wiggins back, 11th 20-point game of the year for Wiggins after missing the last couple with the personal reasons. And Buddy Hield had the 4 steals we talked about. Warriors without Draymond Green again, in addition to Jonathan Kuminga, Gary Payton II, and Brandon Pajemski. Sounds like GP2 is going to be back on Wednesday. Sounds like Draymond's got a shot to be back on Wednesday. Kuminga obviously still at least 3 weeks away. And Pajemski, no firm timetable as he continues to deal with the right abdominal injury. So no timetable for Pajemski at this point. It doesn't sound like he's not going to play necessarily. It doesn't sound like on Wednesday. And we'll stay tuned for the next update on Wednesday from Steve Kerr on that one. Couple of more here in the chat as we close it up. Andis Brown, if they sign Kuminga to a large contract, that pretty much eliminates whatever salary cap space they would have to get a star, unless they move Wiggins. It would. You got to wait and see what the number is, but that obviously has the potential to change their different aprons that they're in, different levels of tax that they would pay, and there are different restrictions put in place by the CBA when you get to certain levels. But you can obviously also make different trades to get under the number. And that was a big part of the reason why the Warriors wanted to get under that first apron. This year, they hard capped themselves at the first apron, because if you stay out of it for a year, it makes it not as bad to go back in it as it would be if you're in it for multiple years consecutively. So that was a benefit of what the Warriors did there. Max Lopez, to mortgage your future, you have to have a future. Yeah. The future is, at this point, I mean, Kuminga is the only legit prospect at this point. And again, we don't need to spend a bunch of time on it now, but even that is questionable as to what level he could be. A good player, yes, but is he a future superstar? Is he a future all-star? Is he a future even number 1 option on a winning team? Like, we don't even know that. Honestly, we don't know if he's a number 2 option even on a winning team, because we haven't seen him do it with the Warriors. So time will tell on that, but the Warriors are going to have to pay him regardless of whether they believe that's what he can be. So, all right, we'll call it a night on that note here and reconvene we'll reconvene with the Warriors and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Kyle, great stuff, my man. Who did we have tonight? We had Cole Lapelt and we had Jacob Violante here at the beginning of the show. Anybody I'm leaving out?
No, that's it. Yeah, a little all-star lineup right there.
Yeah, that's a great lineup. That is a great lineup. So yeah, good job by everybody in studio. We'll talk to you Wednesday. Tough night for the Warriors. Another kind of rock bottom low point. Back in action Wednesday again, 6:30 tip, and then we'll have Dubs OT for you right about this time on Wednesday following that one. This is KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Barrett driving, kick out Boucher, yet to miss in the 4th. He got it! Boucher is 6 for 6 and has got 15 points in the 4th quarter.
He's still celebrating. It's his birthday month.
John Dickinson.
No, God! No, God, please, no.
Big audio quality show.
You are a sicko, and I appreciate you for it, because I'm a sicko.
I just know they kicked our ass tonight.
No class, no balls.
Sucks. It sucks. I don't like falling below 500, but here we are, so we got to do better.